test. Keep your eye on these lovely people in the seafoam, teal, mint, spearmint. I'm not exactly sure what kind of green to call it. Seafoam, but it's not just seafoam, it's like seafoam at dawn in the Bahamas kind of a green, right? Seafoam of a Bahamas dawn. There we go. Yeah, it's all about that. And you want to keep that cool and soothing feeling in your minds today as we try to throw some really complicated thinking your way. But keep your eye on the people in the seafoam green at a Bahamas dawn t-shirts, some of which you might be able to own if you compete in the activities at our intermission between our two parts, between session 1 and session 2. You can go home wearing a seafoam Bahamas dawn t-shirt with that attractive rainbow evocative of the sunset on that very same day, so that people can think of that Bahamas trip as you're going as well as when you're coming. So you can have a chance to wear one of those t-shirts. Look for that chance between session 1 and session 2. But also look to these people who are wearing that attractive color right now. They can help you come and go from the Nation Theater. So if you need any assistance at all over the course of the morning, please reach out to one of those people and gently call upon them, and they can assist you. We're going to get started in just another minute or two. Go in 3 or I've got go away. We're going to get started in just 2 minutes, folks. So settle in. You may want to have something to take notes with. Oh, look. That's telling us we should take our seats. Except me, I have to stand up here and talk to you, which is fine. It's part of the point. This is an excellent example, by the way, of stage composition drawing focus. Just can't resist the urge to teach a little directing. Just having a red spot on a black stage kind of draws your eye, but also lets you know where the cameras are pointed. Please do remember that today's talks are being recorded, and that the primary purpose of today, in addition to gathering us all together to have a conversation, is to record that conversation for posterity and allow these TED Talks to be shared with the world globally by means of the TEDx website. So please do keep that in mind, that this is an event that is going out to the future, as well as something that's happening this morning, and we want to try and respect the speaker in the event with the spirit that it deserves. So keep that in mind as we listen to our speakers today. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you very much. I like it here. Could I hear that again? Good morning. Hey, that's awesome. Oh, wow, is that what it feels like to be a kindergarten teacher? That's awesome. Just to have a whole room suddenly say good morning back to you feels great. My name is Kirk Andrew Everest, and I'll be your host for this morning. It is my privilege to welcome you to TEDx Austin College 2021. Yeah, go ahead, give it a cheer. Totally worth a cheer. Excuse me while my glasses fog up. This is exciting. We are excited to join you here in the Sally and Jim Nation Theater in the Ida Green Communications Center on the Austin College campus in Sherman, Texas, along with all of you connecting via live stream from all over the world. It's all about converging and connecting. Our theme this year, as you can see in your programs and on the screen behind me, is confluence. It was chosen and developed by a group of students with divergent majors and interests who came together to form the TEDx Austin College executive team. Everything we see and hear today was organized by this team of students who have done a marvelous job of planning and producing this event during a global pandemic and developed creative ways to engage with you, our audience, to bring us all together with today's speakers, both virtually and in person. Along with the support staff and technicians who have made this event possible, their names are in the back of your program. Let's extend a heartfelt thank you for all of their work right now. Thanks. Thanks for helping me applaud because I don't have enough hands to be able to do this. They have created a short video to introduce you to this year's theme of confluence, which we'll take a look at right now.
Our minds are separated into the left brain and the right brain. Logic and creativity. When these two parts naturally flow together, new and stronger ideas emerge. But it goes beyond just water. It involves allowing oneself to naturally respond to change and create connections. Over time and space, we gradually draw together and deepen our connections with new people and ourselves through shared experience and ideas. TEDx Austin College invites you to broaden your mind in order to allow the joining and mingling of differing ideas.
Let's hear it for our Austin College TEDx 2021. Confluence embodies what TEDx is all about: the merging of ideas, the intersection and overlapping and flowing together. And eye-opening discoveries through conversation and discussion. This is a confluence conference. Think of the merging of rivers, the creation and maintenance of crossroads, and even the moments of serendipity where everything seems to come together, like right now. And now is the time for us to invite Austin College President O'Day to the nation's stage to welcome us all to TEDx Austin College 2021. President O'Day.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to our community, welcome to our campus for what is really a signature event at Austin College, and that is TEDx Austin College, the 2021 version. As many of you know, this started back in 2016. It was a student initiative then. It's a student initiative and organized by students today. And over these this will be the 6th year, I guess, we have produced 28 videos for the TED Global Hub. And of those 28 videos, they have been viewed over 390,000 times. That is amazing. And today we're going to add 6 more to that inventory, and we're very, very excited about our speakers today. That inventory will be posted on the TEDx network, and that is an amazing thing. So we look forward to our speakers today. We want to make sure that everyone has a wonderful time today, and I know we will. I was speaking to our speakers last evening at a dinner, and I said, you needn't worry about this morning. You are in front of literally the friendliest audience you could possibly have. And I know that to be true. And so with that, let me take just a moment to thank and congratulate our speakers in advance of this wonderful event this morning. Let us also take a moment to once again thank and congratulate the student organizers of this event. Everything that has been organized, this has taken a year to put together. It always does. Right down to the last details of how you checked in this morning. The Rue Band made an appearance. The foam, green, lime, sunrise, exactly. Our student organizers that'll be helping throughout the morning. So speakers, thank you, congratulations. Students, thank you, congratulations. And while they don't want me to say this, I'm going to say it anyway. The students do a phenomenal job, but they are not without guidance and mentors. And so there is a team of Austin College administrators as well that I want to make sure that we take a moment to give them a big round of applause as well. And so with that, without further ado, let us begin.
Thank you, President O'Day. Another round of applause for President O'Day of Austin College. Before we continue, we have a few things about our schedule for the day I need to go over with you. We have 2 sessions, each about an hour and 15 minutes long, with 3 speakers in each. You may have noticed the speakers are listed in your programs in alphabetical order. This is a TED requirement. You won't know who's speaking in which session or in what order until they appear. I'll try to keep you informed. After session 1, sit tight. The students have planned some fascinating activities for everyone here. You may be able to score one of those cool Bahama sunrise colored t-shirts that you can enjoy straight from your seats in the theater. We'll be following COVID safety protocols during intermission, and ushers will help direct traffic so you can get up, use the restroom, stretch your legs, get back to your seat in time to join in with what the students have planned. They'll have a means for you to play along with your mobile devices, but take a moment, if you haven't already, to take these out right now and turn them off or silence them. You may have noticed the film crew and equipment. These are closed public sessions for a select audience that enable us to produce those videos that will be shared globally on the TEDx website. What does that mean for you, the people in this room? Please silence or extinguish your cell phones. Please keep your candy wrappers and rustling papers to a minimum, myself included. If you need to exit, please try to leave as quietly and unobtrusively as possible, and try not to do so during a speaker's TED Talk. But don't be totally quiet. We want to hear you react. We hope you'll enjoy every moment of this fascinating assembly of speakers and make your enthusiastic responses very clearly heard. All of these steps will help ensure that these moments can be cataloged and shared, where these ideas can overlap with others through TEDx, which asks, by the way, that we begin each event with this official TED video welcome.
From Kenya to Colombia, from Iraq to Korea, in slums, in schools, in prisons, and in theaters, every day people gather at TEDx events around the world to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. Today, you are part of a global conversation about our shared future. So what is this TEDx? TEDx is an initiative of the TED Conference, a nonprofit devoted to ideas worth spreading. We grant free licenses to allow TED-like events to spread globally. This event today is based on the TED Conference format and ideals, but is independently organized by your local community. So please make sure to thank the team of volunteers who worked so hard on today's event. It's their ideas, dedication, and time that made it all possible. It's they who booked all the speakers, and the views you'll hear today are, of course, those of those speakers, not necessarily of TEDs. But we hope their talks spark an exciting conversation among you. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for openness and for critical thinking, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you'll take out. And now, on with the show.
Finally, the part we've been waiting for, when our audience gets the chance to meet our speakers and their extraordinary ideas. They're going to give us an opportunity for some high-level cogitation. It's time to do our job and listen to what they've been thinking about. If you're watching via remote device or social media, please think along with us from home. First up is Dr. Ting Lan Sun, an Austin College alum currently living in Sacramento, California, who earned her master's degree in education from Stanford University and her PhD in education from the University of California at Davis. She co-founded Natomas Charter School and serves as a member of the California State Board of Education. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ting Lan Sun to the stage.
When I was 11 years old, my life suddenly changed. I was in 5th grade in the US bicentennial year of 1976, and I won a regional essay contest entitled, "What America Means to Me." Now, for you to understand why this changed my life, I have to give you some background. I'm a first-generation immigrant. My father brought our family to the United States in 1970 when I was 5 years old. I didn't speak a word of English, but was immediately enrolled into kindergarten at a time when our public school system had little to no support for what are now called English language learners. As a result, I sat in the back of the class for a number of years, and I actually didn't learn to read until I was in 3rd grade. So winning a writing contest 2 years after that was a big deal. America means a land of freedom, of peace, and of love. And with that first line of my essay, I fell for the American dream, hook, line, and sinker. And thus began my serious assimilation into Western culture. But that journey had consequences. And it wasn't until 40 years later that I realized a lesson through the confluence of perception, value, and courage. And that lesson begins with my paternal grandmother, who was born in 1911 China. Now, my grandmother, what I remember of her before we came to the States, she was kind. She made great dumplings. And when I was 4, I could wear her shoes. My grandmother had bound feet. Born in the cusp between 19th and 20th century China, my grandmother, along with thousands of girls during her time, underwent a ritual in which they would purposely deform the natural shape of their feet by binding them tightly with cloth. After several painful years, the toes would break, the foot would fold under itself to form tiny, perfect little 3-inch lotus shapes. It was considered sexy at the time. Now, some of you may well be repulsed by that kind of practice, but try explaining breast implants to a 19th century Chinese person. Bound feet is grounded in social status, body image, gender roles, and the repression of women. I always felt sad for her, my grandmother. I thought she was really sad, and that made me sad. And that is how I defined her through my newly assimilated 21st century Western feminist perspective. And this is important, my perspective. My first concept of confluence, perception. Now, stay with me. You're going to go on this journey with me, okay? Our right to our individual thoughts and opinions is greatly valued in the United States. Our ability to think independently and creatively is at the heart of our democracy. French philosopher René Descartes coined the phrase, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Descartes was asserting that we as humans know that we exist because of the mere fact that we ponder that existence. In other words, as long as we continue to test our assumptions, we can be assured that we are real and not a figment of our own imagination. But today, that ability to test our assumptions and our internal biases is constantly being compromised because we live in a world, mainly through technology, that caters to us. It's all about me. We have become a society of ergo sum, I am. Just leave the cogito, the thinking part, out of it. Now, I'm not knocking technology at all. I love technology. If I can get something quicker, faster, easier, catered to me, why not? Some might even say it's the next level of human evolution. Perhaps. But we are all now creating our own virtual realities. And we don't need a 17th century French philosopher to tell us this. Just ask 21st century neurologist Anel Seth. Seth's research tells us that our brains are actually hardwired to create our own realities, what he calls controlled hallucinations. Our perceptions are controlled hallucinations because even as we take in external objective information, our subjective brain takes that information and places it into an already existing internal framework. In fact, our brain has a tendency to filter out anything that doesn't fit in that framework. We're in a constant self-fulfilling feedback loop. And as a result, we as individuals agree less and less on what reality truly is. Just look at our politics, our news feeds, and any number of social media posts. And here's the million-dollar question. If we can't agree on what is reality, how will we ever come to consensus on what is of worth or value? And this leads me to my next concept, value. Ian Golden of the Oxford Martin School at Oxford University says that we live in times of excess information and little judgment. We don't even agree on what is common sense, much less what is common value. But if we are to survive and thrive as a country, as a world, we must learn to see past our own perspectives and find value in others. And the key might be to reframe how we see value, not so much in terms of what is valuable to us, but how we can be of value to other people. Ron Kaufman of Uplifting Service defines taking action to be of value to someone else as service. Yes, service. To be of service, to be of value to someone else, you have to put yourself in that person's place, to see the world from that person's perspective. What better way to get yourself out of that constant self-fulfilling feedback loop? Service to your community, to others in the world, will put the cogito, the thinking part, back into the ergo sum part of Descartes' formula. And this leads me to my last concept, courage. Now, how many of you are familiar with the work of Brené Brown? Yeah, all right, I love Brené Brown. Brené talks about courage and vulnerability and fear and shame all in the same breath because they're the same. There's no courage without shame, there's no courage without fear, and there's no courage without vulnerability. Testing long-held perceptions to be of value to someone else takes courage. It takes courage to confront your internal biases and assumptions and to admit to your fears and weaknesses. Because it is the ultimate exercise in humility. If you were to test your perceptions, you may very well find out how wrong you have been all this time, like I did. I am embarrassed to tell you that for a number of years, going back to my grandmother, I held on to the thought of my grandmother as a sad woman, a victim of her times and circumstances. Her bound feet, her position as second wife, her beatings from my grandfather were not a value proposition in the new world in which I had to make my own way. I was afraid of what others would think, and I didn't have the courage to own this part of my story. And I think neither did my father. He never spoke of her, although he always kept a photo of her in his office. A few years ago, I reached out to an uncle I had not spoken to in 20 years. I wanted to ask him about his mother, my grandmother. And the story I held on to all of these years for most of my life has now changed. I learned that she went to a Christian church every Sunday, that her bound feet won her a position in a household of a wealthy merchant at a time when girls were being put in orphanages by the droves. And by giving birth to my father, the first son of the household, it was she that my grandfather brought to Taiwan, not the first wife, after the Chinese Civil War. And because my grandmother showed up, bound feet and all, I'm here before you today. It took me 50 years to step back into my grandmother's shoes, this time metaphorically, to realize her. There's something else I wanted to tell you that brings the story to full circle. A few years ago, I took a group of teachers and students on an international goodwill trip to China. One of the places that we visited was Jinan, the capital of the Shandong province from which my grandparents originated. We were going on an airplane from one city to another when one of our teachers struck up a conversation with a female Jinan student, university student. In the course of that conversation, the teacher pointed to me a few rows up and said, "Yeah, that's my boss." The Jinan student couldn't believe it. "That's your boss?" She looked at him, a tall, articulate white man, and then at me, an older, westernized version of herself. And she thought he was joking at first. I think now about that event, and I think about my grandmother and how my perception of her has changed, and therefore of myself has changed. And I hold out the hope that that Jinan student's perception of herself has also changed, and that she too may one day be the boss of a white man. 吃水不忘君人. We drink from the well that others dug. Some read this proverb to mean that we should appreciate or we owe something to those who came before. But in Chinese, it doesn't say appreciate. It says, don't forget. And this is how I came from bound feet to the American dream. I try not to forget to test my perceptions, to find value and be of value to others, and to have the courage to continue writing my story in rewriting that story. Thank you. 谢谢.
Let's hear it for Dr. Ting-Lin Sun. We will not forget the well and the water from it that you have shared with us today. Thank you, Dr. Ting-Lin Sun. For our next speaker, I want you to just take a moment to notice where you're sitting, the sounds of the room around you, the feel of your seat, what it feels like to wear a mask. Recognizing that everybody in the room is wearing the same general kind of mask, but every person underneath that mask is a very, very different person. We're all having different experiences while also having similar experiences. And here's the thing, you're among friends. That's what life at Austin College is like. You're among friends. And it's a special honor when a current student is nominated and chosen as a TEDx speaker. So I'm very excited to introduce to you Kate Kale, currently a junior at Austin College from Dallas, Texas, studying political science and art. Let the nation please welcome Kate Kale to the stage.
Hi. As a young woman, I've had a lot of pretty cool opportunities. One that I'm most proud of is having my art displayed at the Dallas Museum of Art before I turned 17. While I was at the reception honoring me and the other young artists whose work was displayed there, I could not have been more uncomfortable. It wasn't because I didn't think that I was worthy of the recognition. It was because the backs of my arms and legs were touching the velvet upholstery of their auditorium chairs. For me, the sensation of touching velvet is unbearable. While I was being honored for something I was proud of, all I could think about was the chair that I had to sit in. You might be thinking, big deal, I don't like certain textures either, but there's more to this story you need to know. My name is Kate Kale, I'm 20 years old, and I'm autistic. No cheers for the autism. When I was a freshman in high school, my family noticed that I was having difficulty connecting with my peers. I'd also developed severe anxiety, and it showed up in unexpected ways. I'd always had autistic traits and struggles, but I thought that I was just weird. My family took me in for an evaluation where we learned I was autistic. We were very surprised because I'm not what people would typically think of as an autistic person. Autism is diagnosed when societal demand for neurotypical behavior outweighs a person's ability to conform to that demand. Autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, is a lifelong developmental disability that can cause deficits in social interaction, communication, as well as sensory issues, among other symptoms. I've found that a lot of neurotypical people, and even some autistic people, struggle with the idea of the autistic spectrum. This is partially because I think it's poorly named, but also partially because the way that scientists think about autism changes constantly as they do more research. In the past, autism was thought of as having 3 categories: mild, moderate, and severe. Later, it was thought of more like this, as a continuum between high functioning and low functioning, with high functioning also being called Asperger's syndrome. You might think that if a person has the same symptoms, what you call their disorder doesn't matter. Here's why I don't prefer the term Asperger's syndrome. Hans Asperger was an early researcher on autistic kids and a medical doctor. He was also a Nazi who believed in eugenics, and he sent a lot of the kids that he worked with to the Third Reich's child euthanasia and sterilization programs. While not the Nazis' main targets, autistic people were considered a threat to the Third Reich goal of a genetically pure society. When people use the term Asperger's, they're reinforcing the idea that autistic people have no value to society. This is why I prefer my disorder be referred to as autism or autism spectrum disorder rather than Asperger's syndrome. Nowadays, the spectrum is thought of more like this. This shows the different aspects that autistic people can struggle with and the degree to which an individual struggles with that particular aspect. When you think about autism this way, it becomes more clear why people have different strengths, struggles, and behaviors than others. Autism has many different symptoms, and they can vary widely from person to person. When you think of autism, some symptoms you might think of are poor communication, not making eye contact, obsessing over special interests, and having sensory meltdowns. But there are a lot more common symptoms you might never have thought of before, like making too much eye contact, heightened emotions, and high affective empathy. These less commonly thought of symptoms are more common in women and girls with autism. Here, you can see a spectrum that I filled out to reflect my experiences. You can see that I have a lot of sensory struggles, and I focus a lot on my special interests, but I have high affective empathy, which makes it easier to communicate with others. Okay, put that down. Right there. Okay. So, after the initial shock of my diagnosis, it began to make a lot of sense. I finally understood why I had struggled to pick up on negative emotions, like if someone's sad or frustrated. This affected my relationships for the first 15 years of my life. I'm very grateful for my diagnosis because it allowed me to understand and accept myself, and I was very lucky to get it. For every 4 males diagnosed with autism, only 1 female is diagnosed. Studies that have followed children from birth have shown that the natural ratio of autistic males to females is closer to 3 to 1. The reason for this discrepancy is likely the way that autism has been defined, studied, and diagnosed. Diagnostic tests for autism are based on studies done on white autistic males, which likely leads to a higher rate of misdiagnosis in women. I would like to add that this is not only an issue for women, but also minorities. White children are 19% more likely than black children and 65% more likely than Hispanic children to receive an autism diagnosis. Males who display mild symptoms of autism are diagnosed on average 2 years earlier than women who display similar symptoms. This could be because female restricted interests are generally more socially accepted than male restricted interests. When you think of restricted interests, you probably think about, trains. Autistic people like trains. Well, I've never had any interest in trains. When I was a kid, my special interest was in insects. The people in my life thought that this was just a natural, healthy interest in the sciences, and they never flagged it as an autistic trait. While my special interests were an autistic trait that was largely ignored, my other autistic traits went unnoticed as a kid because I was adept at masking them. Masking is a behavior by which autistic people try to camouflage and hide their autistic traits. When neurotypical people hear this for the first time, they might think that autistic people are manipulative or insecure for trying to hide our autism. That's not true. The reason people mask is because of a natural human desire to fit in, connect with others, and experience social and professional success. Masking behaviors can include forcing eye contact, mimicking others' behaviors, expressions, and gestures, and even memorizing scripts for small talk and common conversations. Some people are better at masking than others. I'm really good at it, which people tell me all the time, whether they know it or not. If someone tells me that they never would have known I was autistic if I hadn't told them, or even that I don't seem autistic, they're really telling me that I'm good at masking. People generally see this as a really positive thing. It allows me to live like a normal life. And while it's true that things can be easier when people can't tell you're autistic off the bat, it's impossible for a person with autism spectrum disorder to not be heavily affected by it. Autism is a part of us. It affects the way we think, interact with others, and see the world throughout our life. This isn't something that can be turned off with masking. It simply gets pushed down to a level below that at which other people can see it. Think about this. When you're talking to someone, you're doing a lot of stuff at once. You have the right posture, you're the right distance from the other person, you're making the right facial expressions to convey your mood, you might be gesturing, you're modulating your tone, you're making the right amount of eye contact, you're making, enough so they know you're listening, but not too much so that it's creepy, and you're predicting what that other person is going to say next. For neurotypical people, these things come naturally. But when I'm masking, I have to think about all of these things at once. I've become skilled at juggling these things over the years, but it is a Herculean task, and for some, its complexity makes it impossible. The difficulty of masking makes it very stressful. The fact that autistic people are expected to do this all the time to fit in can lead to secondary mental health challenges. Depression can stem from the fact that you're working so hard and you still aren't accepted, while anxiety can come from having to mask for a good portion of the day, every day, or risk being ostracized and discriminated against. These secondary mental health challenges are of particular issue for women with autism. Starting at adolescence, 34% of autistic women have depression and 36% have anxiety. While these mental health challenges are a big issue, the biggest problem caused by masking is that it can make it much more difficult to receive a diagnosis. If someone is really good at masking, they may never be diagnosed at all. Men and children are the groups shown to be least skilled at masking, and they're also the groups diagnosed most often. Conversely, case studies show that women are the best at masking, and this likely leads to their lower rates of diagnosis. Earlier diagnosis can help you get treatment that can help you in almost every aspect of your life, including with anxiety and depression. Treatment for autistic people gets better all the time as more research is done, but it is rare to find therapists and other people who assist autistic people that recognize the extra challenges that come with being female. When you struggle socially as a woman, learning to succeed socially as a man just isn't enough. Womanhood is a unique and hard to navigate experience all its own. The rules of female friendship, how to talk about romance, menstruation, and even how to stay safe from sexual predators are all obstacles that autistic women face but don't receive enough support for. While it's tempting in our society to look at gender as something small, obsolete, or insignificant, the truth is, gender does matter. And when you're autistic, it matters a lot. The autistic brain works the same way in both men and women, and we experience the same deficits. The difference is in the disconnect between the lived experiences of men and women. All autistic people are born autistic, but from birth, girls are thrust into a more socially rigorous environment that both increases the pressures autistic people face daily and the pressure to mask. Yes, it increases the pressure autistic people face daily and the pressure to mask. Yikes. Oh, for any autistic person, the part of their autism that you can see is not what that person's actually experiencing. It's impossible for someone with an outside perspective to label someone else's autism, be that label mild, moderate, or any other label. You can see me up here and try to label mine to try to differentiate me from another autistic person you may have seen, maybe a little boy having a meltdown in the mall. But the truth is, the feelings we're feeling right now, me and the little boy having a meltdown in the mall, are probably more similar than you might think. I've just learned how to mask them after years of pressure and practice. Part of the reason I'm able to do this is because what society expects of a grown woman is more than they expect of a little boy, which is fair. But society also expects more from a little girl than a little boy. Girls are expected to have higher emotional intelligence and care more about their peers' feelings from a young age than boys. It's reinforced in almost every aspect of their life, from TV shows and toys to the words and actions of family and teachers. Women are better at masking because society expects more from us and doesn't make as many allowances for us. Society will make an exception for an autistic man's social deficits in exchange for the knowledge and perspective he can bring to the table, but it won't do the same thing for autistic women. I want you guys to leave today knowing that autism is not a disease and it can't be cured. It's just a different way that some brains can work. If you want to support autistic people, you can support organizations like Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, Autistics for Autistics, and Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network that advocate for autistic self-love and acceptance, rather than organizations that spread fear about autism. You can also identify yourself to the people in your life as an autistic ally, be understanding of everyone, and allow friends and family to unmask with you. This is also a call to action for the psychology community to conduct more research on women, people of color, and other marginalized groups with autism. Most of all, I want you to know that every person with autism is different. I got up here to share my perspective because I'm not what most people would think of when they think of a person with autism. But that doesn't mean that every woman with autism is going to have the same or even a similar experience to mine. My autism journey is just one out of thousands that can provide insight into the way autistic people think, interact with others, and see the world. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Kate Kale. If those of you out in the darkness may not be aware what's on the monitors that you see in front of the cameras right here, all that's on that monitor is a screen showing the speaker what's going on behind them and a timer counting down. So I just want to remind you, it takes a great deal of courage to face a dark void and a timer and still be calling on your speech from memory. So a round of applause for Kate Kale for that, and for all of our speakers being willing to do that. But also, thank you very much, Kate, for sharing with us the courage it takes to look. Some brains work. Here to talk to us and continue discussing this business of getting outside ourselves and creating opportunities for confluence and creativity and coming together is our third speaker, Laura J. Lawson. She graduated from Austin College in 2010 with majors in French and psychology, earned an MFA from the University at Memphis. An artist and educator, she currently works as an adjunct art instructor here at Austin College. Please welcome to the stage, Laura J. Lawson.
My name is Laura, and I'm an artist. It's my job, my career, and my calling. Despite drawing and painting for my entire life, I denied this fact about myself for a little while. You know the stereotypes. I just didn't think it was a real job. I decided that these were odds worth overcoming when I was given the opportunity to study art in France. I remember the exact day I made the decision. I was wandering through the Louvre, a little lost, when I stumbled across this. Liberty Leading the People by Eugène Delacroix. Now, this isn't even my favorite painting, but I was instantly awestruck by what I saw. I knew right away that this was my calling because I was in the presence of a masterpiece. So, how do we define a masterpiece? I really think it's just a matter of personal taste, but there are some things we can look at here to kind of break it down a little bit. Delacroix used lifelike colors and realistic textures. He painted this extremely skillfully. He also arranged the composition to be visually engaging and dynamic, and it alludes to an historic moment, which was a really popular thing to do at the time. And depending on what you know of history, this may or may not actually do a good job of alluding to the July Revolution of 1830 in France. Now, I think this is a masterpiece because of a much more spiritual component. I feel, even though I have no connection to 1830s France, when I look at this, I feel deeply moved by this allegorical figure of liberty uniting this group of very different people to fight for a better future. I don't need to understand French politics to understand what hope and sacrifice feel like. What's amazing is that Delacroix made this with his hands, with paint, canvas, brushes, and I think a little something extra, something special. But what is that something extra? How do we make a masterpiece? Was Delacroix a genius? Personally, I don't think so. I think he was just a guy named Eugene whose job was to make paintings. I mean, he did a great job at it. What he had were circumstances that enabled him to put the right amount of labor and love into that one artwork and many others throughout his career. So while I don't have a name for that little something extra that makes a masterpiece, I know what it takes to tap into that. There are two resources that everybody needs to have a creative practice that's healthy enough to create a masterpiece: space and time. Sounds pretty basic, right? It's true, though. Our creative output reaches exponential new heights when we have access to a greater quantity and quality of space and time. Before I explain, I want to make sure that you heard me correctly. I said our creative output. You are creative. We hold a stigma that some people are creative and some people aren't, but it's true. You may even think, if I'm not good at it, why even try? Here's the thing. You don't have to be good at what you're doing for that to be a creative act. If you made your breakfast this morning, you took separate ingredients and you created a meal. If you've been studying for a test recently, you are creating pathways in your brain so that you better understand that subject. So think about all the things that you do on a regular basis, and maybe try thinking of those as creative acts that could be worthy of better resources. So, space and time. Let's start with space. Let's say you need to write an essay, maybe some creative fiction. Before you start, you might decide to clean up your desk first. If you're anything like me, you're going to clean your whole entire apartment. Why is that? Why do we do that? This is how space affects us. Our environment is full of stimuli that influence the way we work. So while a messy room can distract us from focused activity, the opposite is true. Things that inspire us can actually make the task easier. So do what comes naturally to you. Gaze out of the window. Fidget. Dance. Let your space be a place for you to process your thoughts outside of yourself so you can really expand your creativity. Take care of your space and let it be a place that inspires you rather than a place that holds you back. Space can also influence what you wind up choosing to create in the first place. I'm a studio artist, so I rent a studio. When I have a bigger studio to work in, I feel empowered to make huge artworks. Conversely, my artwork tends to shrink when my space is cramped. It's almost as if I forget that I have the ability to make huge artworks because my space is subconsciously telling me not to. I have a workaround for this, though, a good habit that I picked up, where I delegate space with studio. I can get stuck making the same type of painting for weeks at a time in my main area, but the second table is where I get to play around. I'll show you some of the results of what I've gained by having this extra space. This is where I first learned that ink sticks to plastic really beautifully. I've incorporated this into most of my work lately. Here, I totally messed up this map, but on that second table, I was able to salvage it for a new piece about the fragility of cities. And here, I learned how to build my own LEDs so I could light up my sculptures from the inside. Thank you. If I had never set aside the second table for experimentation and trying new things, I don't think these pieces would exist today. So, how does time factor into our creative process? I think this quote by Toni Morrison puts it really beautifully. We are traditionally rather proud of ourselves for having slipped creative work in there between the domestic chores and obligations. I'm not sure we deserve such big A+s for that. Just like we need more space than a task may physically require, we need more time than we think we do. It is normal to make mistakes, and it is okay to start over. Don't let some perceived scarcity of time make you think that you can never mess up when you create. The only difference between a mistake being helpful or harmful is how close your deadline is. So, how do we add time for creativity when we only have 24 hours to work with? It's really not about adding hours with a time turner, but with rearranging our schedules according to priority. I know we all have things that eat up a ton of time that have no real benefit for us, like a really long TV binge or too much social media. Make sure you rank those lower in your list of priorities than your guitar lessons. Now, things like family, work, and school can keep your #1 spots. You can still be a responsible person and take back time for creativity. You could try rearranging your schedule just a little bit so that any bits of free time you have here and there can be consolidated into a longer session, 1 day a week. Once you do find time for creativity, make sure you protect it. You can still have a life and go out with your friends spur of the moment, but not if that's during the creative time you worked so hard to find. Don't let others say that what you're doing is not important. Creative work is work. Thank you. So when prioritizing space and time for our creative work, you can't have one without the other. If you have lots of time for a project but no space to work on it, that time's going to feel frustrating and unproductive. Conversely, if you have a big, beautiful space to work in but no time to go there, then what's the point? You need to have both. When you put together better spaces and time, what you produce is a better quality artwork. Now, I understand that we live in an age where all communication is instant, and real estate is skyrocketing in price. Staking a claim for more space and more time can feel impossible. While you may be sticking up for creativity for the first time today, artists have been working against odds like this for a long time. Even artists who are successful at making masterpieces, like our friend Eugene here, they are regular people. We are regular people. We get tired and sick and need to take days off. You've heard the term starving artist, but can you really work when you're hungry? Eugene here, our old friend, he lived to be 65 years old, but I wonder what else he would have painted if he had survived his illness that took his life. Artists are still taking extra jobs to pay the bills at the expense of creating. We do not have some magical ability to thrive in bad conditions. I met an artist this summer who had to take several weeks off from creating because her art studio had no air conditioning. In Texas. This is not something to be romanticized in a society where insurance or affordable workspace, new masterpieces simply stop happening. So why is it that we think artists are exempt from the same resources as other vocations? I suspect that this is because art is one of the few fields that you can dabble in for fun and do so safely. It's inclusive. You can have a career in anything and choose to paint watercolors on the weekends, but there's no such thing as a Sunday surgeon. So artists are fighting for legitimacy within our own professions, and therefore we're constantly fighting for resources like space and time. Rather than fight, my dream is to foster a community where we give. Thankfully, there are some organizations who are already on this by providing affordable studio space and other facilities to local artists. If you have such a place in your community, and not every community has one yet, please consider supporting them. Even if you don't use the tools that the artists work with, you get to enjoy what the artists make as a result. If you're looking to be more creative at home, talk to your family or your roommates and work together as a household to find more space, more time, and help each other protect it. Listen to their needs and make sure that all of you are getting what you need as a micro-community. If you're in a position of leadership, look out for ways to provide this for your team, like offering flexible work schedules. And if you've tried, but you feel like you've reached the limit, you can't find any more space or any more time for your creative work, ask for it. We need to normalize that this is a universal need. Creativity is in all of us. When we feel free to be our most creative with the support of better spaces and lots of time, it could be you who makes our next masterpiece. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Laura J. Lawson. Thank you very much for sharing your time to help us create our creative time and place here and now when we can get outside of ourselves and each other. Another round of applause for Laura J. Lawson and for our three speakers. We have come to the end of our very first session, but sit tight. The students behind TEDx AC will be up here on stage in a moment to help you pass the time before we resume at 10:45 with session 2. So the session will resume precisely at 10:45. In the meantime, please enjoy interacting with the students behind TEDx AC, who are going to take the mic from me any second, right? Yeah, here we go. I pass the torch to you, sir.
What's up, guys? How are we feeling at TEDx Austin College? It is right up here. I wanted to run out from behind that, but Claudia said it might be a little too distracting, so I'm going to refrain. But we hope everybody's having a good time. I got my handy-dandy clicker, and we're ready to roll.
Yeah, we're ready to go. Hello, I am Claudia.
I'm Nick. Yeah, keep it going.
Thank you, thank you. I love my fans. You guys are the best. So thank you guys so much for coming to TEDx Austin College today.
Hey, Claudia, I would love to introduce myself as well. Hey, I'm Nick. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Woo. Go right ahead.
Thank you, thank you. So we would love it if you guys could stick around with us for the next 20-ish minutes. We have a really fun and interactive intermission planned for you guys.
I don't know if any of you guys have ever used Menti before. Do we have any Menti veterans in the building? Anybody? Oh, yeah. Okay, thank you. So Menti is an interactive program that we're going to be using to let all of you guys learn a little bit about TEDx, learn a little bit about yourself maybe, and have some fun during our intermission. So if you'll pull out your smartphone right here, go to www.menti.com and enter the code there at the top. Once you get there, Claudia can read the code out for you.
Thank you. So the code is 92480922. Maybe
one more time, Claudia?
That is 92480922. 480922.
Thank you for all the thumbs up. Maybe spam a thumbs up in the chat, guys.
If you guys get logged out at all during the intermission, the code will be at the top of the screen. We'll repeat it a few times, but just go look at that and plug it in.
Definitely. Also, if you're having any trouble getting logged in, feel free to just raise your hand. We have plenty of volunteers who are happy to help, and we'll come give you some assistance. But are we doing good so far? Everybody getting in pretty nicely? Yeah? Sweet.
Once you've gotten yourself logged in, go ahead and raise that phone for us so we know that we're ready to go on.
Maybe
Ooh.
wave them in the air like you just don't care. What? Thank you. All right, we're looking good. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. If you need some time, speak now. Forever hold your peace. I think we're good. All right, so we're going to have a little trivia competition throughout the duration of this intermission. So make sure you stay locked in. There's going to be 8 trivia questions. And the top 10 performers today are going to win one of these wonderful TEDx shirts. Yeah, I got some excitement in the crowd. Additionally, there's going to be some opportunities for audience engagement. If you look behind you, my friend Jacob is standing back there. Yeah, let's get fired up for Jacob. So we're going to have some open-ended questions, and if you're willing to share your answers to some of these, just give us a hand raise. Jacob's going to be running around with the mic, and if you're willing to participate, you may also get a t-shirt. So
We do ask that you please use your real name when putting it in so we can find you, give you a shout out. But yeah, fake names, we won't be able to find you.
Speaking of shout outs, I'm going to give a quick shout out to the TEDx Instagram. There should be a link on your screen. And if you want to click that, you can get a little behind the scenes view of the process of TEDx, get to know a little bit about our speakers and our team. It's a super worthwhile follow. So, all right, I think that should have had enough time. We'll move on to our first trivia question. Oh! Whoa, would you look at that? And like Claudia said earlier, make sure you put your real name in so that way we can identify you after the competition and get you your t-shirt if you do win. And also, if you're unable to get your name in, don't worry about it. Just remember auto-generated name that they give you, and take a screenshot at the end of the performance at the end of the intermission, and we'll make sure we get you your shirt regardless. All right, everybody good? We all got our names in there? Let's roll. Question number 1, my friends. How many TEDx events are hosted worldwide annually?
This was mentioned in the video that we showed earlier today, so if you're paying close attention, you should know the answer.
It would be very sad if anybody gets this one wrong. What are we thinking?
It's okay. Give it your best guess.
All right, time's up.
Best guess. Oh!
And yes, the correct yeah, 3,000! Woo! So to all of our 3,000 pickers, thank you. To everyone who answered incorrectly, do better. Hey, there's 7 more questions. You got plenty of chances to catch back up on the leaderboard. But speaking of the leaderboard, let's get a quick peek into that. Heartstorm leading the charge. If you see your name up on the leaderboard, give us a little yell. Yeah, good job, guys. APO, I didn't hear a lot of yells over here. I need you guys to catch up. All right, let's keep it going.
In this next session that we have coming up, we have our wonderful other student speaker, Miriam, who will be talking about being bilingual, how that affects your personality. So we would love to know if you could speak any other language other than the one you currently speak, what would it be?
And I don't know if you guys are familiar with word clouds, but we got a little word cloud action here. The more an answer is entered by our participants, the bigger it'll get, so you can get a little feel for what your fellow audience members are answering here. Looks like sign language, Spanish, and French are our most common answers here. German also taking a strong hold, as well as Japanese. But some really varied answers here. It's super cool to see what everybody would choose. And it's still growing.
Look at that. All the languages.
Cumulonimbus. You told me not to. Mandarin also taking a good hold here, as well as Arabic. I'm seeing Pig Latin up there, a little bit of Simlish. Bleep, blurp, bleep, bleep, blurp. Well, that's great. Minion language. Claudia, I heard Claudia's fluent in Minion.
I actually am.
Would you like to give us a demonstration?
Maybe later. Yeah, come after the show and I'll speak Minion
Come
for
approach
you.
Claudia
Maybe a little bit
afterwards.
later.
Yeah, she actually has a master's degree in Minion speaking, so
Correct.
pay her a visit.
I do.
So we'll keep it rolling. We'd like to know why you would choose that particular language. If you want to enter it into the box, and also if you're willing to share your answer with the rest of us, just give us a quick hand raise, and
We're gonna throw it
Jacob
out to
will come
Jacob.
find you. Yeah.
Ooh, this group over here.
Okay.
Testing. Okay, ma'am, what language did you choose and why?
I chose Spanish because I am going to become a teacher, and the majority of my students speak Spanish, and I think it's really important that I'm able to communicate with them and help them learn better.
That is amazing.
Wow, what an answer.
What's your name again?
Thank you.
What's your name?
Lily.
Thank you, Lily.
Get one more round of applause for
Beautiful,
Lily.
Lily. Thank you.
Certified beast. Yeah. We got plenty of shirts.
I like the
Come
answer
over here.
cool.
I saw green
Languages
over
are
here
cool.
first.
Yeah.
What is your name and what language do you choose and why?
My name's KJ, and I said I want to learn French because I really want to live in Switzerland because it seems like a really cool place.
Yeah, Swiss rolls.
nice.
Ever had those?
Oh.
They will pop up later in our presentation, so keep your mind on those. You want to keep it going? Okay. Do you guys hear that? You know what it's time for? It's time for another trivia question. Let's get it going. Dr. Ting's son grew up in a house that was owned by a member of which rock band?
Answer quickly.
You're gonna have to make your best guess here. What are we thinking? What's the consensus? Anybody? Any guesses? The Wiggles?
The Wiggles?
Yeah, it was. The answer is ZZ Top. I love that 11 people answered the Wiggles, though. Thank you to you, 11 people. Ting's son lived in a house that was owned by bassist Dusty Hill.
She actually met him one
did.
time when she went to the house. She got to meet him.
Yes, she did. I was gonna sing a ZZ Top song, but I think I've decided against it, so we're gonna keep it rolling.
Sing it.
And go to another trivia question here before I get tempted to do so. So this is a little quote ID. I want you guys to try to guess who said this quote. Just hit us with your best shot here. Didn't even notice. Yeah, hey. Big Time Rush or One Direction? I want to get the
One
pulse of the
Direction.
audience. Yeah! That didn't answer my question, but I'm glad you guys are fired up. I'm a Big Time Rush guy, personally. The answer here is the legendary singer Michael Bolton. Shout out to you 20 who got it right. And we're going to get another peek at our leaderboard here. Let's see.
Ooh.
Heartstorm still firmly in the lead.
Heartstorm. Still in the lead.
All right. If you see your name up there, give me another little cheer. Yeah, APO getting some more representation. I like it. Oh,
Look at number 2,
we
Miss
got
Maddie over
somebody
here.
with inside information. All right, Claudia, would you like to intro our social
Yes,
experiment?
I can. So, Miss Ting Sun did talk about perception in her talk earlier today. And so we decided that we would like to do our own little social experiment on perception. So, go ahead and fill out this scale on how you feel about possums. 10 being you love them, 1 being maybe no.
Not so much. Claudia, how do you feel about possums? I think I know the answer here.
Yeah. They said it a nice 2 for me. I'm not going to say they're my favorite animal. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. There's just something about them sitting in trash cans. They make me a little nervous.
I'm not a fan of the bare tails. Something about them just,
Yeah.
they just bother me. But we're going to see if we can shift your perception a bit. This is our friend. I wanted to name him Peter. Claudia was against that for whatever reason, so...
I just think he's our confluence possum. That's it.
A nameless possum friend. So after that, how are we feeling now? I think our average was around 5.8.
It was.
And it looks like it may be going down, which is not what we expected.
No, it looks like we're going up a little bit. We're at the
here we go.
6.3.
Half point increase.
Okay. I mean, I can say after that picture, it'd probably move up to a 3 for me.
Very open-minded of you, Claudia. Thank
you.
Well, even if it was a slight increase, we've definitely changed a few people's perceptions, so thank you for being open to that.
Keep those open minds.
Yeah. What's that sound? What's that sound, Claudia?
Sweet trivia.
I think it's time for another trivia question. After this one, we'll have hit the halfway point, so we're getting close to winning shirts. Kelly Yarbrough is a self-proclaimed hoarder of which of these items? Her talk is coming up in the second half. If you've heard her talk, you would know pretty clearly what the answer would be here, but if you haven't, just give it your best shot. I just can't, the music's just taking me up. All right, time's up. Let's see. Yes, the answer is houseplants. Yes.
Woo!
That's a big answer share. Good job to the 44 who got it right.
Good job. Yes, I apologize to all of you that chose rare Beanie Babies. That is actually Nick's collection that he keeps at home.
That's actually something that we keep on the down low, Claudia.
Sorry. So, Anne will soon be leading off our second session where she's going to talk about the consensus model for decision making. So we're creating a nice little pie chart with which factor is most important to you personally. Yes, we are. So you could choose one or more options with that.
Looks like intuition is taking the lead. People like to go with their gut. Also, you can pick as many as 3 answers, whichever 3 are most prevalent whenever you're making a decision. But it looks like a fairly even. Oh, is my mic's back on? What a time. It looks like a fairly even share. We've got some varied opinions in here. I keep those answers rolling in. Oh,
Nick,
what's
what about
the sitch?
you? Oh.
Claudia,
Yeah.
What's your primary decision-making tactic?
I'm going to go with impact on others.
Empathy. Empathy's
Yes.
dope. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
How sweet. How sweet.
Nick, what about you?
I'm somewhat of a Googler myself, but
So you're in that 5%.
yeah. So, as you mentioned earlier, Miriam will be speaking in the second half, and she is somewhat of a world traveler. So we'd like you guys to guess how many continents Miriam has visited.
Here's a little hint. Miriam has lived in America as well as Ethiopia. So
Please don't pick less than 2.
don't pick less than 2. You will be wrong.
4.6. We still got some answers coming in. I think we're good. So the correct answer is 4. Miriam has lived in North America and Africa. She's also been to Asia and Europe. They call her Mrs. Worldwide, Mrs. 305. So Wish she was in the building so I could say that to her face.
You can tell her later.
Question number 5. Here we go, guys. This lives in our head. The phrase service is taking action to create value for someone else is attributed to which of these individuals? If you were listening closely to Ting's talk, you would know the answer to this one.
Katie, do not put Bobby Flay. I heard you say it. Don't do it.
You're always cooking. How many Food Network's fans do we have in here? Yeah. What's y'all's favorite show? I'm a Chopped guy myself.
Yes,
Triple
that's
D?
right. Whoever said that, exactly. Yes.
And that's right here, right now, at TEDx Austin College. Just need some sunglasses to put on my head backwards. Yes, the answer is Ron Kaufman. Thank you to the 66 who got that correct. Once again to the 17 who got it wrong. Be better.
You guys are all doing great.
Sorry.
Don't listen to
Nick.
Nick.
Good cop, bad cop action. Another peek at our leaderboard. Looks like Heartstorm has been dethroned. No. Heartstorm still in the lead. Bethel moving up,
Bethel
though.
moving up. Look at you go.
Do we have any new additions to our leaderboard? Anybody newly on the top 10? Anybody? Yeah, raise the roof a little bit. Love it.
Ting also talked about courage in her talk, so we'd love it if you could share with us who is the most courageous person you know. Put in your answers, and then we're going to send Jacob out there to get some of your answers.
Jacob, what's good?
And who's the most courageous person you know? But first, what's your name?
Oh, my name is Ebony, and the most courageous person that I know is my mother because she is full of love and she's not afraid to sacrifice.
That's awesome.
We love our moms.
We're going to throw it down right here.
Yeah, let's get some answers up here.
What's your name and give us your answer?
My name is Valerie, and the most
Hi, Valerie.
Hi, Claudia. The most courageous person I know. Well, I was gonna say my mom, but Darian.
We got
Darian, do
one
something
more.
brave.
We got one more back here. What's your name and who is the most courageous person you know?
All right, hello. My name is Jeffrey. Yeah, hi guys. I'm back here. Anyway,
Jeffrey.
so the most courageous person to me would be my father because he's done so many things for me.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jeffrey.
One for the dads.
And we got a shirt down here whenever y'all are available. So a lot of great answers up there. Thank you, guys. Question number 6, my friends. We're in the home stretch. In addition to English, Laura Lawson speaks this language.
She did hint at this in her talk.
Yeah, think of the context. My clicker! Think of the context and you should be able to figure this one out. Thank you so much. She's all right. It's never seen Star Trek. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes! And yes, the answer is French. Thank you guys so much for being
Almost
engaged there.
Everybody said French.
Yeah, great job. Love it.
Laura did share some of her artwork, but we just wanted to throw another piece up there since she is such an amazing artist. This one is called Venus 2813. Laura actually designs a lot of her art from, it's based off of the surface of the Earth as well as other planets. So this one is based off of Venus.
So we'd love to know how that particular image made you feel. You're going to sit down on a therapist's couch real quick and let us know how you're feeling.
Make another little word cloud.
We love word clouds here.
Anybody want to share with us how this art makes them feel? Okay, Jacob. I see lots of hands up there.
Sir,
A hand up.
what's your name and how did this make you feel?
My name is Matthew, and I feel very inspired to create my own art from her talk and the piece.
Yes, that's what we are going for. Anybody can be creative.
Name and how this makes you feel.
Okay, my name is Sheila, and I actually work with Laura in the art department and have bought many of her pieces, and her art always makes me feel grounded.
Love that.
Great word, yeah. Anybody else want to share?
Oh, I'm coming.
Is she moving?
Well, I love her. She's class last year, but also I put confluent just because, you know.
Oh,
vibes.
sticking
But,
the theme.
Also, like just the merging of the colors, it just felt very like smooth and it was very nice.
Very nice.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank
We
you. I
have
like
one more
that.
back
All right,
here.
great. Thank you guys for those answers.
Ma'am, what is your name and how did this make you feel?
My name is Becca. Hello. It honestly made me feel like there's so much talent in the world, and I like aspire to do more, and it just really lets me in awe. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Becca.
All right. So everybody get one last gander at our word cloud.
Happy seems very popular.
Pog. It seems like we had a concerted effort to say Pog. I have a feeling I know what corner of the room that came from. Thank you, gamers.
Oh.
Speaking of starving artists, I'm starting to feel my tummy rumble a little bit, Claudia. I'm getting a little hungry, so we're going to take a left turn and see what your favorite Little Debbie snack is. I told you Swiss rolls were going to come back up, and here they are. The fact that only 7 people have chosen Swiss rolls should be a felony.
No, I support that.
is a
I'm personally a Honey Buns fan, so if you're a Honey Bun fan, thank you, yes.
Why does everything Claudia say get applause?
I'm sorry, Nick.
I'm personally
it's
a Swiss
just
roll
who I
fan.
am.
Yeah, thank you. We'd love to hear from our Cosmic Brownie fanatics, though. Anybody? Come on. Yeah, that was really weak. There's 27 of you, 28. We'd like to hear from our Cosmic Brownie fanatics.
There's 28 of y'all. Let's hear it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, you guys will be happy to hear that Kate Kale is also an avid eater of Cosmic Brownies. So, yeah. Is eater a word? Consumer? Maybe? Who knows?
Who knows? We can make it a word. So, as Laura was talking about with space and time to work with our creativity, we'd love to know what space you focus in the best. We made a little spider web so you can fill out multiple places that you focus the best in.
I've spent weeks trying to think of a spider pun, and just nothing came to mind. So
if you guys have a good one, you can share with
anybody's got a good
us.
spider pun, I'm open to it. Looks like
Ooh.
coffee shop is
Lots of coffee
leading
shops.
the charge here.
What
Claudia-
are some favorite coffee shops here that y'all like to go?
CJ!
CJ!
Support
Shout
local
out to
business,
CJ's.
baby.
We love CJ's.
You guys like the Mexican mocha? Crazy good, yeah. Claudia, where do you focus best?
I will admit I focus the best right here in Ida Green. This is my favorite
Great
spot
spot.
to come do my
Great
homework.
spot.
Yes.
Love it.
Thank you. Nick, what about you? Where do you focus best?
I don't really do a whole lot of focusing, but
Not surprised.
Alice in my room, so it's a good spot. Thank you guys. It looks like we've got a fairly even distribution. Outdoors and coffee shops seem to be our most popular answers, but we got a little bit of everything in this room, so thank you guys for your participation there. Oh, it's music to my ears.
I love it.
Question number 7. Which style of dance did Ann Cruz Melton specialize in during her teenage years? Oh, this one's calling my name.
If you answer correctly, Nick will demonstrate this dance for us.
This was not agreed on beforehand.
He
but,
will dance for us.
The music might just take me over. Oh no! We can't control it. Yes, Canadian style. Do we have any Canadian style cloggers in the building? I think Anne would be appalled if she saw that, but it's the best we got.
Nick is a disgrace to the Canadian style clogging community.
I'm sorry,
so
Canada. Love maple syrup. And it's time for our final question. All the marbles, okay? I hope everybody's happy with their performance so far, but it's time to really bring it home, okay? How many TEDx events are happening today around the world? 3, 2, 1. And our trivia competition has come to a close. Let's see what the answer is. Yes, it's 63.
Good job.
We are in very good company today.
Another little fun fact is there's actually at least one TED event going on in every single continent today, except for Antarctica.
We need justice for Antarctica.
Justice for Antarctica.
We need some penguin TED Talks.
Maybe they'll have their own little
Definitely.
penguin TED Talk.
So guys, I think it's time to check our leaderboard. Let's see who won the shirts today.
Ooh, Emma shooting ahead.
Wow. Emma with a late push. Heartstorm is our winner today.
Oh.
If I can look past though, Bethel, Maddie, Jess, Abby, Ensign, Delia. What does it say right here? I can't tell who's number 8. Carlos!
Carlos!
Emma and Ben are our big winners today. Please just take a screenshot of your top 10 placement and bring it up to one of us after the event today, and we will get you your TEDx shirt. We will not forget about you, promise. And,
If you are on the leaderboard and you are not here in the theater with us today, that is all right. We would still love to send you a t-shirt. So go ahead and take a screenshot and email it to us at tedx@austincollege.edu.
we'll make it happen for you.
So email that to us at tedx@austincollege.edu and we will send you one of these lovely t-shirts.
And we'd just like to thank you guys so much for hanging out with us over the course of this intermission. I know it's been a wild ride, a roller coaster of emotions, so thank you guys for bearing with us and having some fun. We got another link to our Austin College YouTube channel, so feel free to give us a like and subscribe. That would be fantastic. Smash that like button.
But seriously, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us during this intermission, dealing with Nick and I as your hosts. We would love it if you guys could just stay around with us for session 2. We have 3 more incredible talks coming up. If you need to use the restroom, go ahead and get that done now, and we'll get session 2 started in just a few minutes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy the second half.
If our winners...
Whoa, hey. Yeah, hello.
Hello, hello.
There we go. Good. Hello. Did you swap mics by any chance?
We did not swap mics.
Okay, so this is still my mic. Just a quick announcement. We will be resuming session 2 in just 10 minutes. But in the meantime, we're going to be rebooting the sound system. So just be patient, please. If there are any loud squeals, just cringe, and we'll be okay.
And that's exactly what?
You ready?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Part 2. Let's go.
Kurt, how did you become so smooth? It's so seamless.
What an interesting thing to say to a guy before he goes on.
You're like butter.
Very thoughtful of you. Thank you very much. Hello, folks. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the break. It was definitely very interesting for me. I hope it was interesting for you too. Let's have a round of applause for those speakers earlier this morning. Some of them are still here with us. I, for one, am particularly enjoying this whole process of celebrating the act of thinking together in public. And our first speaker here for session 2 is definitely going to provide an opportunity for us to create some common ground through shared experience. Our first speaker is Ann Cruz Melton from Longview, Texas. Graduated from Austin College in 2003 with a major in religion. She went on to earn an MA from Emerson College in Publishing and Writing, and currently serves as the Executive Director of Consensus Council, a nonprofit organization based in Bismarck, North Dakota. Please join me in welcoming Ann Cruz Melton to the stage.
When I was 18, I wanted to become a Christian counselor and show everyone that Jesus was the answer to their problems. So, naturally, I came to Austin College. Not because I thought it was rife with heathens, though it was, but because as certain as I was in my beliefs, there was also a part of me that was curious, wanted to travel abroad, to encounter a world different than my own. The catch was, I thought I wanted to encounter difference to change it. Of course, I was changed instead, leading me toward my current path as Director of Consensus Council and building consensus across differences. But more on that in a moment. In college, a few things happened. I took a religious autobiographies class and read about the lives of people deeply rooted in their faiths. I learned Buddha and Krishna said things similar to Jesus centuries earlier. I began to doubt. I changed my major from psychology to religion. I tagged along with Church Hoppers, a group organized by Chaplain Henry Bucher, to an Eastern Orthodox congregation in Dallas, where men and women worship separately. I traveled to India to study Hinduism over a Jan term, visiting temples strung with marigolds and watching ritual cremation on the banks of the Ganges. Finally, I spent a semester abroad in the United Kingdom, where the Anglican campus chapel also made space for Quaker meetings and for Muslims praying 5 times a day. My world was blown open through these experiences and the people I met, but I felt no call to convert to another religion. Instead, I became more deeply rooted in my own tradition and redefining my tradition and the egalitarian values I wanted to embody and share. I was particularly struck by the Quakers, known as the Society of Friends, sitting in circles of silence until moved to speak. Quakers believe all people hold the light of God within us, so no strict hierarchy of leadership is necessary. To make decisions, they gather in a group and believe that together, the group can discern a truth that exceeds the understanding of one individual. In other words, by seeking a group's collective wisdom, the solution can be greater than the sum of its parts. They don't use majority rule, which excludes some people while empowering others. They make decisions by consensus. I witnessed this process but was baffled. Could this really work? Now, I was raised a strict Presbyterian, baptized in Robert's Rules of Order. As preschoolers, we made playground decisions by committee. I endearingly thought of my grandmother as Madam Moderator. We like to say the American government was modeled on the Presbyterian Church. It turns out parliamentary procedure was originally devised to make meetings more fair. Systems of power. I'm going to do that again for the mic. It turns out parliamentary procedure was originally devised to make meetings more fair and inclusive. But as it plays out within our systems of power, these traditions, including majority voting, often serve only to uphold the status quo. Majority rule, by definition, excludes the minority. Not to mention that many people, like the indigenous communities I've gotten to know in North Dakota, are not raised steeped in parliamentary procedure like I was, presenting a barrier to civic participation. Loath as I am to say it, I started to think that maybe the Presbyterian way wasn't the only or even the best way to do things. Through my religious studies and my later interfaith work, I stumbled on another way of thinking, a process that's been around for centuries, a more inclusive, creative way. Consensus. Now, what is consensus? This word gets thrown around a lot nowadays, in headlines about climate change and the G7, but having a group reach any type of decision or compromise does not mean they reached consensus. Most simply, consensus is a general agreement. It's derived from the Latin consentire, to agree, to feel together. The goal of consensus building is for all participants to reach a unified solution, to reach an agreement derived from the wisdom of the group. Consensus is not the same as a unanimous vote. It's definitely not majority rule. It's an alternative to majority rule. To put this in perspective, let's pause for a moment and discuss different types of decision making. Majority rule is what we're most familiar with. Yes, no, abstain. Vote something up or down if you have a vote in the first place. Whatever gets the most votes wins, period. Let's imagine a silly example. Decades ago, our town planted a bunch of banana trees. Now, there are too many bananas. What are we going to do with all the bananas? At a town commission meeting, one commissioner proposes a law requiring every person to eat 20 bananas. Another thinks we should compost the bananas, but the town's compost pile is almost full. A third suggests we just remove the banana trees, but that's deemed too expensive. There is discussion and then a vote. The majority votes in favor of eating the bananas. What about people who are allergic to bananas or who don't like bananas? They lose. Though this law is not set in stone, it would be a long process to change it, and meanwhile, people allergic and averse to bananas suffer. Compromise is an alternative that might seem to satisfy more people, an agreement where each side makes concessions. But often compromise whittles away at different solutions, weakening both, landing somewhere in the middle. Now our town commission is split on what to do. Half of them want everyone to eat 20 bananas. The other half want to compost the bananas. So, as compromise, they decide to have everyone eat 10 bananas and compost the rest. Okay. Okay. This means less bananas to eat, but there's still the same problems with allergies and aversion. Meanwhile, the town compost pile still fills up, just not as quickly. We got rid of the bananas for now, but it's going to be a problem again next banana harvest. Now, let's try consensus. Consensus is where a group reaches a solution, a decision, that satisfies all people present. There's often not a predetermined outcome. We know we have too many bananas, but the process is open. What should we do? Maybe the town commissioners don't have all the answers. Plus, they represent a narrow segment of the community. So you want to invite a diversity of people to think about what to do with the bananas. It's not possible or practical to invite everyone in town, but you try to invite people with different expertise and lived experiences, making sure to include people of different ages, races, religions, gender identities, and abilities. So, say you invite a veterinarian, a trucking company owner, a scientist, a forester, and a chef. You also invite a new resident who used to live in the next town over. They all approach the problem from different perspectives. Through facilitated discussion, the committee realizes that the neighboring town has a celebrated vegan bakery. It also has a zoo with a new monkey exhibit. The committee works out a solution. In exchange for sending the next town bananas, everyone in this town will get a free zoo pass and shipments of banana bread. The towns will split the shipping cost, which is cheap because the scientists just invented a new banana-based fuel. The committee worked out a creative solution, one that wasn't even considered when voting on the law for all people to eat bananas. This did require a significant time investment, and we had to make sure a diversity of folks were invited to help problem solve. But now everyone is satisfied, and the town doesn't have to overload the compost pile or remove the trees or make everyone sick with bananas. Let's think about why and how this worked. The committee members represented a variety of professions, but that's only a small part of who they are. It turns out the trucking company owner has a kid who's allergic to bananas, so she pays special attention to dietary needs. The veterinarian practices a religion where bananas are considered a sacrament, so feels strongly about not removing the banana trees. The scientist is an immigrant from Central America, from a country once pejoratively known as a banana republic, so cautions the committee against contracting with a monopoly like United Fruit Company. The forester is not vegan, but his cousin is, which is how he knows about the next town's vegan bakery. By bringing our full selves and lived experiences, we're more likely to build consensus and arrive at a creative and inclusive solution. Of course, this is an imaginary example, but consensus is a decision-making model used by many groups and organizations, including governments around the world. I have learned that for consensus to work, create space for people to bring their full selves to the table. Only then can you arrive at a truly creative solution everyone present supports with no voices left out. There's only so much I can cover in a 15-minute talk, but here are my 3 tips for building consensus. First, be intentional about who is invited to the table. In our town example, it wasn't just the elected officials, the power holders who were invited. It was a diversity of people with different expertise and lived experiences, and their input was valued equally. They entered into discussion in good faith for a common cause and shared from their own experiences. This took more time, but enhanced the decision-making capacity of the group, resulting in a creative solution everyone supported. Second, level the power dynamics. This is important. A simple way to do this is to use first names instead of titles. When people come together as their full selves, not as the position they hold, or the profession or organization they represent, or the degrees they have earned, it helps to use first names and remove formalities. I'm going to say that again. It helps to use first names and remove formalities. There are exceptions to this rule, but in my experience, as long as you explain why you want to use first names, people are open to this. In my work at Consensus Council, we convene a forum of regional legislators from the Dakotas, Minnesota, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. They come together once a year to build relationships and talk about regional issues and solutions. An important component of this work is that we address them by first name, as Larry and Gretchen, Stephen and Ian and Carla, not as the Honorable Peter Bjornson, Senator Tomasoni. They are there as equals, talking together as neighbors, not as the political party or leadership position, like Speaker of the House or Leader of the Opposition, that they might represent. Third, embrace, don't ignore, differences. I learned this from interfaith work. After college, I worked for the National Presbyterian Church USA, and later for a Reformed synagogue. And during those years, I participated in a number of ecumenical and interfaith coalitions. When people come together from different faiths to learn from each other and work for a common cause, like alleviating hunger or homelessness or criminal justice reform, the group works best when people are deeply rooted in their own traditions and can be themselves, and don't attempt to water anything down. The goal of interfaith work is not to find common ground on everything, like that we're all following different paths up the same mountain or seek some sort of universalism, but to come to the table to work together, letting our differences exist side by side. When people have to hide part of who they are, they can't share the entirety of their gifts and unique perspectives with others. So, when building consensus, it's important to come together as our full, authentic selves. Listening is the key step. I'm going to stop just a second. When people have to hide part of who they are, they can't share the entirety of their gifts with others. In interfaith work, we acknowledge that we may not agree on everything, but we can listen and learn from each other and come together to find the place where we have a common goal, a shared solution. Similarly, in building consensus, it is important to create space for people to bring their full selves to the table. I've thrown a lot at you, but when you leave here today, I want you to continue asking yourself one question. Wherever you gather in community, ask whether it might be possible to build consensus instead of taking quick votes where one side wins and the other loses. Be intentional about who is invited to the table, especially when making big decisions or tackling big issues. Gently level the power dynamics by using first names. Create space for people to be themselves, to speak candidly from their own experiences. Most importantly, allow room for difference, because it's when we can be our full, authentic selves that we learn the most from each other. Listening is the key step, active, reflective listening, before we can even begin to move toward finding the place where we can build an agreement. At its root, consensus, consentire, to feel together, is about building relationships. It's through listening, inviting diverse perspectives and backgrounds, and taking the time to get to know each other that we build stronger communities and find solutions greater than the sum of their parts. Now I invite you to try it together. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Ann Cruz Melton. And I want to take a moment to thank you for reminding me why in theaters people call me Kirk. It's because in a theater we build a consensus, we build an environment where we're trying to feel something together, just as right now we are trying to feel something together and think together. In the spirit of bringing that full self to the table, I am delighted to introduce another extraordinary Austin College student as our next speaker, bringing her full self or full selves to the table, Mariam Abijah, a senior from Murphy, Texas, majoring in healthcare administration with a minor in chemistry. She plans to pursue a career in medicine. Apart from her many activities at Austin College, she works with Marnot, One Child at a Time, a family-founded organization that provides for underprivileged children in Ethiopia. Please join me in welcoming Mariam Abijah to the nation.
Hi, TEDxAC and Deithnatchu TEDx Austin College. My name is Mariam Abaje, or Mariam Abaje, and I am bilingual in English and Amharic, which is one of the main languages spoken in Ethiopia. Being bilingual is an amazing gift, although sometimes it can get you into trouble. One cool part of speaking a different language is that you can make comments and speak openly in public spaces without anyone listening in. But there is a catch. You can come across someone who would think that they would. I'm gonna redo that. One cool part of speaking a different language is that you can make comments and speak openly without anyone listening in. But there is a catch. You can come across someone who doesn't speak the language. Sorry, let me try that one more time. One more time. Okay. One cool part of speaking a different language is that you can speak openly and make comments without anyone listening in. But there is a catch. You can come across someone who speaks the language, but you wouldn't think that they would. Normally, I personally think I can spot an Ethiopian from a mile away. But I heard about a family friend's story who was in an elevator complimenting a guy's looks to her friend, thinking that the guy couldn't speak Amharic. Once they reached this floor, the guy turned around, smiled, and told them to have a great day in Amharic. I personally would have been speechless, but in the end, it's an experience to laugh at and be grateful to make connections like this with strangers. Being bilingual has been a huge part of my life. Communicating both in English and Amharic has been a part of me ever since I was a kid. However, I recently realized that when I speak my two languages, I felt different and portrayed myself in different ways. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. But before we get into that, let me give you all a little background on my story, my family's story, and how I came to be here. My family consists of me, Nate, or my mom, Achamilish, Abate, or my dad, Abaja, and Wendime, my brother, Nathanael. I grew up going back and forth from Ethiopia and America. My first 6 years were in Texas, but then my family decided we're moving to Ethiopia. Moving wasn't really much of a culture shock, but then again, I was just 6 and was just happy to be with my family. I did have to adjust to speaking Amharic more frequently, and also learn the customs in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, I was constantly encouraged to speak Amharic, but was also taught to keep my thoughts to myself. Not in a negative way, but it was just more of a culture of respect. I was around more people accustomed to only the adults really speaking, and the children there to listen and obey. This was the environment that I grew my Amharic in, and would describe myself as a shy and soft-spoken kid. 7 years later, when I was 13, my family decided we're moving back to Texas, and that was truly a drastic change. I had to accustom myself to the American school system, individualized lifestyle, and also kind of change the way I portrayed myself when I spoke English in this new environment I was now in. Even though I learned textbook English when I was in Ethiopia, throughout junior high and high school, I was able to further cultivate my English. Now, I was in an environment that emphasized speaking up for yourself, and I was able to learn to be confident in myself and that my voice really mattered. This shaped the now outgoing, outspoken person I am when speaking English. So whenever I thought about why I felt different, I went to the one place that I knew would Google. Sadly, there wasn't much research on this, with just a few sources agreeing that people did feel different when they spoke their respective languages. So then I decided to ask the people around me. So now I want to take a quick audience poll. Please clap if you speak a different language. It's okay if you never thought about it, but now please clap if you feel like you have a different personality or portray yourself in a different way when you speak that other language. Okay. Seems like most of y'all agree. So once Google didn't really help me out, I was disappointed, but I knew it couldn't just be me. And I was right. My friend Eva felt the same way. She felt the difference when she spoke English versus speaking Spanish. Eva grew up in Mexico speaking Spanish everywhere she went, and even though she would describe herself as being shy, She always spoke up in school and never felt judged. On the other hand, when she moved to the US, she had an accent and only knew a few words. Imagine feeling so lost in a new country without being able to communicate with anyone at school. Eva was put in regular classes where there wouldn't be a lot of help for her. She somehow managed to pass these classes with only her English second language, or ESL teachers, really putting in the effort to help understand and encourage her. She mainly learned her English through reading, so sometimes when she decided to speak, it didn't always come out right. Anyone who's learned a new word and mispronounced it can identify with that. But this lowered her confidence and made her shy. It even pushed her to not even want to learn English at a time. Even though Eva eventually did become fluent, she still feels that difference. Part of it could be that the cultures are really different in Mexico and America. So even beyond the translation barriers, she felt the difference in the sense of humor as well. What's acceptable and funny in one culture can be seen as offensive in another. She describes that she can't have the same sass in English as she does in Spanish. All these experiences have had an impact on her, but it has led her to become full of compassion, thinking, well, y'all are young and haven't been able to fully develop your language skills. But interestingly enough, the person whose story is most relatable to mine is my mother's, but in the complete opposite way. She is more bold and outspoken when speaking Amharic, while more calm and soft-spoken when speaking English. So then I decided I'm going to look into the environment that she grew her communication in for each of her languages. My mother was born and raised in Ethiopia until she was 7 years old. She grew up in Ethiopia as truly her father's favorite child out of her 4 siblings. Her father always made her feel as though her opinion mattered, and he always believed in her. He showed that with his actions, and that built her confidence in Amharic. On the other hand, she struggled in America. And now let's dive into the beginning of her American experience. When she was 17, she moved to Texas and started living in her uncle's home. She was now in an unfamiliar situation, away from all that she knew, and barely spoke any English. She attended a high school with ESL classes, but was constantly made fun of and discouraged by her peers and her teachers. She had to try to learn English in an environment that wasn't meant for her to flourish, with people who were meant to help her just choosing to look down on her. She was discouraged day after day, with people not even putting in the effort to help her understand how to develop her language in this new country she was now a part of. Now, over 20 years later, she's still discouraged in little ways, with people looking to me to translate her accent. Even though I think she speaks great English, she still feels unsure of it. So while I'm bold and confident when speaking English, I'm more shy and reserved when speaking Amharic, she's the complete opposite. She's seen as a go-to person for Amharic speakers, but when she speaks English, she doesn't always appear confident in what she's saying. But these parts make her who she is, and her journey has led her to become the most empathetic, kind person that I know. So this is definitely not one of those TED Talks where I break out the science and I explain why it is that I feel this way. I'm not even sure that people who study language have done much research on this. I'm just here to share my story and my observations with you. And in my observation, the environment in which one learns the language really impacts the way they portray themselves when they speak that language. Maybe you feel the same way. Or maybe you could think of it as the different ways we portray ourselves in the variety of environments we're put in. Or maybe you're like my father and don't see much of a difference. Or maybe you never even thought about it at all. If anything, the next time you come across someone who doesn't speak English as fluently as you, or at all, think about it. Walk in their shoes. Perhaps my speech today would soften your heart so that you may be patient enough to listen to them and try to understand them. Even attempt to say their name. And it's okay to make a mistake. It's probably better to make a mistake than to not even try at all and make them feel like they're not worth the effort. My mother's name is Achamilish, and no one ever dares to try to say her name when they read it, for fear of getting it wrong. But she actually loves when people try, so that she can correct them instead of them completely disregarding something that makes her different. And by the way, her name means one of a kind. Overall, even though I feel different when I speak my two languages, those two parts of me come together to make me who I am. Being able to communicate in two languages has given me opportunities to learn from different cultures and to also be open and respect other languages and cultures as well. I'm Asad Gunallo, and thank you for listening to my TED Talk.
Let's hear it for Mariam Abajib. One of a kind. One of a kind. Thank you for teaching us. Thank you for teaching us not only how to speak with more than one voice, but to listen in more than one way, with more and listen to more than one voice. We have one more voice to hear from today. Our last speaker is going to bring it all together with a little confluence on the prairie. Kelly Yarbrough is from Manhattan, Kansas, and graduated from Austin College in 2009. Kelly majored in art and English, then earned her Master of Fine Arts degree from Kansas State University in 2016. She founded the Tallgrass Artist Residency and also serves as regional representative of the Kansas Creative Art Industries Commission with a focus in art and ecology. Let's welcome Kelly Yarbrough to the nation.
Wichita, Tawakoni, Kickapoo, the names of 3 tribes that have inhabited the land now called North Central Texas, the place where I grew up. Kaw, Kickapoo, Osage, Sioux, Sac and Fox, Prairie Band of Potawatomi. 6 tribes with ties to the land now called northeastern Kansas, the place I live now. Kelly Yarbrough, that's me. I'm a visual artist and a total prairie nerd. I'm going to talk a lot about prairie ecology in the next few minutes, but it's important to remember that people are also part of a place's ecosystem. We have so much accumulated history and wisdom from many different cultures that we can be learning from to restore healthy relationships with land. And I hope that each of us here recognizes that we have the opportunity to choose to participate in that learning and restoration work. My personal history starts in Plano, Texas, just down the road from here. Plano was a Dallas bedroom community in the 80s, turned corporate headquarters mecca today. But I grew up a suburban kid through and through. Now, my mother was always an active gardener, and I remember this one time going on an errand with her to a plant store on the outskirts of town that sold some very special, more expensive plants called native plants. And I remember thinking that these native plants looked so different and exotic from the normal pansies and petunias I had seen in other plant stores. Now, it may seem funny to think that these native plants looked exotic to me, but of course they would if your whole world was dominated by turf lawn and suburban landscaping. I came to Austin College in 2005, and some of you may know that Austin College actually manages Sneed Restoration Prairie on the west side of town. It's wonderful. Did I visit when I was a student? No. I was not yet prairie aware, you see. This didn't happen until I moved to Manhattan, Kansas, where I live now. Manhattan is at the north end of a region called the Flint Hills, which is a very special place because it's the largest remaining contiguous tract of tallgrass prairie left anywhere in the world. Tallgrass prairie is actually one of the most endangered ecosystems on the planet. Only about 4% of it remains. But it's in the heart of this 4% that I learned about the power of perenniality. Botanically speaking, perennial plants are the ones that live longer than 2 years, as opposed to annuals or biannuals. Many wildflowers are perennials. Perennials are tried and true. They're returning friends that you start to recognize year after year. You mark time by their appearance. But the word perennial also has some really interesting definitions that relate to time. Perennial can refer to something that lasts for a long time. It can mean something that reoccurs many times. Or it can even be used as a synonym for infinity, which is basically like being outside of time. I happen to think that all of these definitions are relevant when it comes to talking about the prairie. The prairie is dominated by perennial plants. These plants appear to die every winter, but they come back with vigor in the spring. And they thrive in this place because their deep roots reach down into the porous limestone bedrock, which of course is there because 250 million years ago, the Permian Sea covered most of North America. But when those seawaters receded, they left a network of gently rolling hills, and the tall, dense grasses that grow there today still move in the wind like waves, echoing their marine history. Talk about big-time perenniality. But it's not just majestic views. It's not just the majestic views that draw me to this place. I believe that when you're present in the perennial landscape, the prairie offers a greater understanding of life as an ecosystem. The prairie shows us how communities survive and thrive together. It teaches us to be mindful of consequences in the power structures. The prairie urges us to consider the long view when making decisions. And it models resiliency, how to work collaboratively with neighbors and have patience with ourselves. Picture this. You're driving away from a city, and the landscape starts to change to farmland. You pass rows and rows of crops. How many different crops do you see growing in a single farm field as you pass by? Usually one, right? That's because modern agriculture says that the best way to produce a crop product is through monoculture, planting one plant at a time. It's efficient and it's predictable, at least until conditions change. See, pests become immune to new pesticides, fungus becomes immune to new fungicides. It's kind of a biological arms race that also puts toxic runoff in our water systems. Plus, soil that's tilled every year gets stripped bare of its nutrients. Planting in monoculture may be efficient for short-term production, but in the long term, it's really ecologically fragile. Modern agriculture is not perennial. However, there's this place in Kansas called the Land Institute that actually has a mission of reintroducing perennial polyculture back into the way we do agriculture. They work with teams of scientists to crossbreed common crop plants with native prairie plants. Now, a lot of our modern crops actually come from prairie plants that have been cultivated over thousands of years. The wild simply bred out of them. The problem is that on their way to the domestication, plants tend to lose some helpful genes. So the Land Institute is actually reintroducing diversity into the genetics of these crop plants. And they're planting in polycultures, planting a variety of plants together at the same time to help each other out so that they are stronger together. This is how native prairies work on their own. A healthy native prairie is a living tapestry of communities that are in constant communication and exchange with each other. Let me ask you another question. Have you ever been in, say, a board meeting and looked around the table? Let me ask you another question. Have you ever been in a board meeting, say, and looked around the table and realized that all the faces look the same? Or maybe you're the one who's different and you constantly feel the need to be the one to speak up, to go against the grain, making things inefficient. Perhaps we also tend to cultivate monocultures in our human communities. Perhaps we breed out dissent, so to speak, thinking that we're strengthening our positions, when in fact, we're making our own communities ecologically fragile. Perhaps intentionally cultivating diversity actually makes us stronger and more resilient as a whole. That word resiliency, it's kind of come to replace the word sustainability in a lot of contexts, right? Resiliency is more about active response to change or trauma. It's about adaptation. I see resiliency modeled in the prairie through acts of creation in response to trauma. Ecologically speaking, the prairie does need certain types of trauma to be what it is, to be healthy. Fire and grazing are two of the big ones. Now, as humans, we tend to want to minimize risk and contain threats. Fire, bad, don't want to be around that. Bison, very nearly eradicated by white settlers who saw Indians as a threat. Now, cattle and bison are both common grazers in Kansas today, but bison have some special characteristics that make them truly of the prairie. In the hot, buggy summers on the plains, bison will roll around in the dust and create these large, shallow depressions in the earth called wallows. The packed earth in the wallow will actually retain rainwater, giving the bison a little extra watering hole when it's hot, or give them a nice cool mud bath to roll around in. Sometimes these wallows will stay wallows for decades and decades and decades, offering generations of bison an oasis. But other times, the wallows will transform into new micro-ecosystems, offering plants just a little more precipitation than the patches of earth around it. Do you want to know another cool thing about bison? We've got some pretty epic storms in the Great Plains. And what does the National Weather Service tell us humans to do when a tornado's been spotted on the ground? Come on, North Texas, let me hear you. Take shelter immediately. Good. That's right. That's not what bison do, though. No. Instead of turning and running away from an approaching storm, bison will actually turn and face the storm and walk right through it together. Have you ever had the chance to be like an abandoned bison wallow? Have you ever faced a place, a community that's experienced trauma, and maybe you've had the opportunity to respond with creativity, collaboration, helping to bring new life and help cultivate new micro-ecosystems? Or maybe you faced a threat that needs direct confrontation. Maybe you've had to face that storm and walk right through it. Maybe you need to be the bison. Now, fire is a particularly dramatic form of ecological trauma that we hear about almost every summer from the giant wildfires that are happening out west. And there are many contributing factors to these fires, but a big one is actually fire suppression. See, fire is a healthy part of most ecosystems. It clears out dead plant matter, opens up space for new growth, and promotes biodiversity. But as humans spread out and develop into these wilderness areas, natural fire becomes less and less acceptable. All that dead plant matter builds up and becomes kindling, ready to ignite. When we suppress natural fire, we actually end up increasing the risk of really catastrophic fire. The Flint Hills of Kansas, however, has a very particular and thrilling fire culture that I'm not sure exists anywhere else. Every spring, ranchers and landowners will gather teams of volunteers together to perform controlled burns. About 2.4 million acres gets burned every year in the Flint Hills alone. These neighbors and friends will pitch in with equipment and water to help each other out, but many of them never have had any formal burn training. They're learning this ritual through hands-on practice. It's totally not uncommon to be driving through the Flint Hills at night in April and come across a totally unattended line of fire just creeping towards the road. How can this happen? Because when burned regularly, grasslands actually tend to burn lower and cooler than the infernos of a parched forest. Now, I've had the chance to help out on a couple of these controlled burns, and I gotta tell you, it is pretty awesome to watch a landscape burn in front of your eyes and feel like you have some sense of control over it. It's also pretty obvious what could happen at any moment if you lost that control. It becomes essential to stay in constant communication with your team and know where you are most safe at any given moment. See, a fire needs fuel to keep going, of course, and you don't want to be in between the fire and its fuel. So it may seem counterintuitive, but you're actually most safe where the fire has just passed through and left the ground totally burnt and charred. Have you ever faced a threat that's threatened to overwhelm you, that you alone can't stop? Sometimes change comes slowly, and sometimes it comes all at once. Sometimes it's really key to understand where that fire's fuel is coming from and remove yourself from the situation. Sometimes it's most important to keep your people close, stay in contact with them, and know where you can be most safe. Well, folks, I hope I'm inspiring in you some curiosity about the prairie, because here's the kicker. Remember how I said there's only 4% of it left? This landscape won't be around if we don't actively protect it. There's a reason I didn't recognize the native plants of my home in that garden store when I was a kid. Prairie has been removed from our developed spaces. And it took me moving to Kansas to figure that out and what it means. This one time I was back home visiting, and I went to a park that had let some native wildflowers grow up in place of the mowed lawn, and I heard this guy nearby look at it and say, "Ugh, looks awful. Why'd they get rid of the lawn?" I wanted to turn around and shake that guy and say, "Who colonized your idea of beauty, man?" Come on, seriously, the idea that a mowed turf is somehow attractive is implanted in our brains, y'all. It's not natural. And I feel like part of my job as a visual artist is to challenge those concepts of beauty. But understand, too, that it's not just pretty flowers that have been erased from the landscape. It's peoples and cultures and knowledge of how to live in and with the world. These are the things that we lose when we lose prairie. But I don't want to end on a downer. No. Good news. Just a couple of years ago, I learned that only minutes from the house that I grew up in, where prairie was an unknown landscape to me, I found that there is a 72-acre Texas prairie preserve called Connemara Meadow. And even though it's surrounded on all sides by urban sprawl, their teams of volunteers have been working for the past 10 or more years to actively restore native Texas prairie. And the last time I visited, they had just reintroduced a new generation of baby quail back into the landscape. They're cute, aren't they? Yeah. I may not live in Texas anymore, but I still feel pride when I see folks taking care to restore and cultivate the true native landscape of my home. So whether you live in Dallas, Texas, or Manhattan, Kansas, or somewhere totally different, I guarantee that you have native landscapes somewhere in proximity to you. And I urge you to find those places and the people that protect them, learn about them, support them, celebrate them. I want to leave you with this. It's a stanza from a poem written by a young poet who overcame a childhood speech impediment to become our nation's first youth poet laureate. And as I listened to her read this on the steps of the U.S. Capitol, I was surprised and ecstatic because I heard prairie embedded in her words. I heard community, creativity, resiliency, perenniality. From the sixth stanza of The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true, that even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Kelly Yarbrough. I would like to say that we have wallowed in intelligence this morning, and I hope that we have left an oasis that can challenge the surrounding monoculture. with the ideas that we've shared here this morning so that those wallows can become wells, and we need to remember who built those wells. So let's have one more round of applause for the speakers who shared those ideas with us this morning. Thank you so much for coming and joining us today and bringing us all together for this event. And before we conclude, their talks will be submitted to TED for posting within the next 30 days. And once they are approved, they will be linked to the Austin College YouTube channel, so you'll be able to see the results there. But before we, like bison, go out into the storm together, I wanted to thank all of you here in the audience for your participation and your warm reception for our speakers. Give yourselves a round of applause. For your patience and your understanding and your attention, we very much appreciate that. We already want you thinking about TEDx Austin College 2022. We hope to see you join us for TEDx Austin College 2022. In the interim, there are 2 ways you can get involved in next year's event right away. 1, please complete the survey you will receive in email. This helps us receive wonderful ideas how to improve the event and continue this process and continue this virtual community, this event over time. Second, nominations are open for speakers for TEDx Austin College 2022. If you are inspired today to share an idea of your own, or if you know someone who might, nominate today. Go to austincollege.edu/TEDx and complete the nomination form there. Thank you all very much for coming together for TEDx Austin College this year. We hope that you will go forth into the storm together. And for you in the theater today, we will escort you out like we did at the break, so please hang out a moment longer. With that said, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and go forth and enjoy the world together. What a wonderful event. Thank you so much.